When we're looking at mental health, what really matters in mental health or well-being or wellness? What really matters?
The heart.
The heart. Is it diagnosis? Is it care? One of the thoughts that comes to my mind most frequently is love. You know, when I take a look at what matters in life, it's the people I care about. It's opportunities to share a message. It's sharing my health, the health that I've uncovered so far in my life. You know, this is what really matters. This is what I want my legacy to be about. Life is kind of like a puzzle. You know, we get a part here and there, and that's really what a lot of the journey of my life has felt like. It felt like a puzzle. And the more information we get, and the more understanding we have, the better we sense what wellness is all about. And it's sort of like we reach a threshold where we cross the line, where our understanding goes deep enough to the point where we see life completely different. Now, mind you, there's a lot of parts out there. You know, just like there's a lot of parts on the PowerPoint image. And maybe with all those parts, the image still isn't clear. But my hope today is to offer some clarity to not just what wellness is, but universal principles. And I didn't invent these universal principles. I'm referring to the universal principles founded by Sydney Banks. There's a saying that goes, truth never changes, and if it does, it wasn't truth to begin with. Okay? So, when I'm talking about universal principles, that's what I'm talking about. Stuff that it doesn't change. It applies to everyone. Now, whether we access our wisdom or our insight or our common sense, that's a whole nother part to it. And sometimes we don't because it gets covered up, right? So, we have innate health, and everybody has it, an unlimited potential of health within them. And all of that conditioning that I went through in life covered it up. But, you know, how many of you, when the sun goes down, calls 911 and says, oh my God, the sun, it's gone, you know, what happened? There'll never be daylight again. You know, I mean, it's silly, right? You know, it's silly because we know. We have this knowing that the sun is going to rise again. Now, if any of you are scientists, we know the sun really doesn't rise. It's just a rotation of the earth around it's the same thing with health. It never, ever goes away. It's within us all the time. It's what covers it up that makes us think that it's not there. So what covers it up? Oh, so I just thought the whole thing about eclipse, you know, that's the whole thing too. What covers it up is an eclipse. The conditions that we, or at least I know for myself, that I bought into, that weren't accurate. And this is really interesting because my mind will consciously bring forth thoughts that are inaccurate to life. Isn't that interesting? My consciousness doesn't say, well, you know, that thought isn't very accurate. There really is not a monster in the closet, so don't worry about it. No, that's not what my consciousness is saying. My consciousness is bringing my fears to life, and my palms begin to sweat, my heart palpitates, and, you know, I grab my teddy bear as close as I can because that monster's going to leap out, and I want him to get the teddy bear first, not me. So, but at some point, those illusions that I've bought into all of a sudden dissipate. And that's what health does for all of us. It dissipates all of those illusions. If it doesn't resemble health, then it's something else. And health is eternal, and that something else is temporary. You know, any condition is temporary. It's all temporary. Health isn't. Mind is the energy that propels the consciousness to bring to life our thoughts. It's pretty simple, isn't it? Okay, you guys got it, you pass. Again, this is an introduction. You know, if someone said to me in a lecture, well, if you want to know the meaning of life, mind, consciousness, and thought. Now, I had a conversation with a prominent professor at a university, and was talking about health and wellness at there was a lecture, and they were talking about stuff, and I was in the audience, and they said, well, you know, health and wellness is very complicated. It's very complicated. It's going to take years, and we're going to have to figure out all these details. And I rose my hand, and I said, you know, I disagree. I think health and wellness is very simple. Because if it was complicated, then only a few people would have access to it. If it was simple, then all of us have access to it.
Right.
So that's what this is about. All of us having access to health. No one being left behind. Okay? And so then this professor asked me, he goes, well, okay, well, if it's so simple, could you explain it to me? And he goes, I only got 5 minutes. And I thought, oh God, here we go. What am I going to say? You know, because these are just words. But when you look beyond the words, it's the meaning. That's what counts. You know, it's as if if you read something somewhere that said, like let's say someone left a note on a piece of paper that said, I'm late, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. What would that mean? I'm late. Could mean a lot of different things, huh? So the meaning is conveyed through the words. So these are words to convey something very profound. So what are they conveying? Well, let's take a look. Without the energy of the mind, what would we have? Now, if we had all these thoughts in our mind going on all the time, but no consciousness to bring them to life, what would we have? And if we had a mind and consciousness, and consciousness was focusing, but there were no thoughts to focus on, what would we have? So the catalyst of what it is that we experience in life, I'm strongly suggesting, is not coming from the outside in. It's coming from the inside out. And this is really, really a blessing, because that means freedom is inside of us, not outside of us. Freedom is not that mansion, or at this point selling the mansion. Freedom is the peace that we have within us regardless of where we're at or what we're going through. Because, you know, I could terrorize myself with my own thinking and bring that to life. You know, I could be in a room just like this and nothing's going on except me terrorizing myself. Or I could be in a room just like this and having a blast.
That's right.
You know, being at peace. It's a shift between looking towards the light, looking towards the eclipsed darkness that covers the light. And again, I am not unique. I do this all the time. But knowing that I'm the one who's doing it, that helps me a great deal.
I think the key is knowing that you have a choice, and that's the power of is knowing that you always have a choice.
Yeah, and that's free will. I have the free will. Now, I'm not perfect. I make bad choices. You know, maybe this shirt doesn't match with this sweater. Maybe it's 90 degrees and I wore a sweater. Whoa, bad choice. But you know what? I'm human. I'm okay with that. You know, sometimes I recognize it beforehand, and other times I have something called hindsight. See, and so this is a great thing. You see, our wellness covers all sides.
It's dynamic.
Before, during, and after.
Can I say something?
Yes.
You know, you're kind of like hitting and missing on the way I think every single day, because the thought, the consciousness, and the thought, it's like my mind constantly goes and goes and goes, and yet reality is doesn't match my thought, and just what you're saying here is making sense, and the things I'm finding funny is because you hit it, you know, you hit it right there. I don't know if I'm making sense.
That sounds like a beautiful experience. To just have something that just resonates within you. Because that's the profound understanding of life within you rising to the surface. That's not me. Okay? I can't make anyone have a profound experience. I can't even make myself have one. Even if I hit this microphone against my head, I will not have a profound experience. You know, I could write, I will have a profound experience on the board 20 times, it won't happen. It's not my intellectual thinking that brings it forward, it's quieting the intellect and letting the natural thought come through. And when I say natural thought, what I'm referring to is wisdom. That's just a word for a quality of thought. What kind of thought? Profound thought. Thought based in truth. And we all have that. Isn't that a miracle? We all have what we need to get through this life, no matter what. Now, I'm not saying that that endless potential means that, you know, we're going to be the next CEO of Enron or something like that. What it means is that wherever we're at, we can have this sense of peace and serenity regardless. And just that in itself actually changes our reality. That's what transformation is, true transformation from the inside out. So the three principles are not linear. They are the foundation. Like I studied art, so I know a little bit about art. Primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. What can you do with the primary colors? 3. You can mix them together and guess what you get? Every other color. So that's what we're talking about here when I'm talking about 3 principles. You mix, or as Sid would say, you amalgamate mind, consciousness, and thought. You get reality. Every single time. It's kind of like going to a casino that you always win. You know? Well, I don't know if that's a good analogy, because there's not very many casinos that... So I'm going to attempt to apply a description of the 3 principles. This is not a definition, it is just a description. How could you define something that's spiritual? You can't, it's formless. All I'm doing is I'm taking formlessness, painting it and sticking it in a jar, and saying this is what formlessness looks like if you paint it and stick it in a jar. Now you take it out of the jar and take the paint off of it, that's what I'm talking about. Okay? So, 3 principles psychology. Transformation of the human spirit begins from within. The energy of the mind has endless potential to consciously bring forth thoughts that are based in wisdom, insight, and common sense. These are the innate guides of well-being that purify the soul and restore balance from within. the gift of mind, consciousness, and thought are the catalyst of meaning which is expressed uniquely by each individual. Understanding how experience unfolds from the inside out is the key to freeing the spirit from personal deception.
La transformación del espíritu humano comienza desde adentro. La energía de la mente tiene un potencial infinito para generar conscientemente pensamientos que se basan en la sabiduría, la perspicacia y el sentido común. Estas son las guías innatas del bienestar que purifican el alma y restablecen el equilibrio desde dentro. El don de la mente, la conciencia y el pensamiento son el catalizador del significado que cada individuo expresa de manera única. Comprender cómo se desarrolla la experiencia desde adentro hacia afuera es la clave para liberar al espíritu del engaño personal.
Does that make sense? I know they're just words, but again, I'm trying to say something deeper than the words themselves. Any thoughts or questions? Anything come to mind? Yes.
What concept do you have about God? We always try about this supreme power or the other people in force or whatever. What concept do you have about God? Where He resides in our mind?
Well, could I answer that question with a story?
Sure.
Okay. This is a story about 3 scientists. One scientist believed in God, and the other 2 did not. And they were all partners, they worked as a team, and they would argue all the time about this, dispute it. Yes, there is a God. No, there isn't a God, and I can prove it. Yes, there is a God, I can prove it. So they had these luncheons that they would go to. Scientists go to these luncheons a lot. They take Fridays off and just go hang out. They can do that. So they went to this luncheon, and it just so happened that the driver was the scientist who believed in God. And they were all talking and stuff like that and driving along, and he was going kind of fast because they started talking about God exists, no, God doesn't exist, and it was getting pretty heated. And then one of the scientists in this passenger seat or shotgun or whatever it's called, he noticed up ahead was a barricade with the word stop on it, and beyond the barricade was a cliff. And they were heading right for it. And they were all having this dispute, and when all of the scientists looked ahead, right before they hit that barricade, they all said, "Dear God." Now, I don't want this to be a sad ending, so I just want to say that none of the scientists actually died. Okay? Now, you might think that it's a miracle. Well, actually what happened was it was a planned event. The driver, who had believed in God, he hired a muralist who did these highly realistic mural designs and had it spanned across the road to look like as if it was a cliff. And instead of actually going over the cliff, they went right through the fabric of this design. Because he wanted to prove to them that God exists. Now, here's the thing. So when someone asks me, what about my belief? How do I see God? Well, I must admit that somehow I have proved to myself that this universe has a divine energy to it. But I can't prove that for anybody else. Only to myself. And the good news is, for me at least, accessing that divine energy has, again, as I had said, it's transformed my life. The secret lies in thought. And maybe someday the field will notice this and realize it as a fact. From then on, it will be taught about mind, consciousness, and thought. This will create a new therapy, a new psychology, a new psychiatry than the world has ever known before. Sydney Banks stated this at a conference in Hawaii in 2003.
El secreto está en el pensamiento, y tal vez algún día el campo se dé cuenta de esto y se dé cuenta de que es un hecho. A partir de entonces, se enseñará sobre mente, conciencia y pensamiento. Esto creará una nueva terapia, una nueva psicología, una nueva psiquiatría que el mundo jamás haya conocido.
Talks directly about healers in mental health systems.
What I heard was that many psychologists went to hear what he was teaching. And from there, and Sid himself would often say, this could change psychology, the field of psychology. And he began talking to psychologists. So I'm a human being, I'm a practitioner. I share my story and I share the principles, because the principles are universal. They go beyond my own level of understanding, and they reach beyond that for each individual, however deep or profound a person hears it. So healing for me as a practitioner is not dependent upon my health, although it would be good if I am somewhat healthy. I can't be doing a thing, and eating McDonald's and, but, oh God, I keep advertising. Jesus, terrible. But I was going to advertise a few more companies, but I'll stop. But, so the point I'm trying to make is that I'm human, I make mistakes. I live many parts of my life through the conditioned world of thinking, the conditioned world I bought into. And my health, through understanding how it's my own thoughts that are creating that condition and bringing it to life through consciousness in my mind, that has allowed me to free up from a lot of those conditioned ways of seeing the world and thinking. Like, I don't see myself as a diagnosis anymore. Or whenever I fill out a form and it says, what's your nationality? I don't see myself as the nationality anymore, but I'll fill in the circle just for the sake of it. But I see myself as a human being. I see myself as, and a lot of people have said this, a spirit in human form. And here we are filling in bubbles, trying to divide the different appearances of that. Well, guess what? Spirit, spirit, spirit. It's what we all are. This formless energy that we can't see, taste, smell, touch, But it's here. Because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be able to do everything that we do every single moment. Yes?
But a human being is composed of two, a spiritual and physical. It's mostly more spiritual than physical, because the spiritual transforms the physical and heals the physical. Sometimes it's more powerful, the spiritual. It's more powerful.
Absolutely. The spiritual manifests the human form in the physiology.
Right.
In this form, I don't have all the answers. I'm not all-knowing. All I have is what is called a perception, a piece. But this piece, these principles, have impacted my life so much. They have a life unto their own. Because these principles are not about a specific person. They're universal. There's several teachers or practitioners who present the three principles that really, have made profound impact on my life. So, it's amazing. Like I said, I started out as a clinician. I never thought I'd be here today, standing in front of people talking about the three principles, because I used to talk about, well, you got to use this and you got to use that, and if this technique doesn't work, and these coping skills, and da-da-da-da-da, and I thought that was the answer, and this is so different. This is so different. But just keep in mind that the source of how I'm able to say what I'm saying today, and my understanding and my personal transformation, and those of many, many others, we owe a lot of thanks to Sid Banks, and I just hope his message goes on in as pure a form as possible. And really all that means is our heart. We speak from our heart. All bets land on health. So I also, there's a couple of books over there to look at, however those are not for sale, they're just to look at. The book that though some of you have won is actually one of two. So that's the first part in the series. So that hopefully you'll buy the second one. But I don't make any profit off of this, by the way, other than the message. I also have some postcards, transformation postcards. You're welcome to take some of those. As you can see, I got a whole stack of them. So if you want to, however much you want to take of that. There's also a book list of Sid's other books that are there, as well as information in Spanish. And did any of you get that poem?
Yeah.
You got the poem too, okay. Oh, I have an extra copy here too. Yes. Oh, I have some extra copies up front. So what I will do is we'll kind of mill around and kind of stretch out, and if you have questions, I'll be up here. Thank you very much.